Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to our program today, where we'll discuss the real you, break free from imposter syndrome, and embrace your authentic self. With our speaker today, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. There are around 15 members on Zoom, and Anshu helped me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome back to another episode of Success Sadhana.
Thank you so much, Jam. Great to see you. Great to be here with all of you today. And great to have an echo. Thank you. Thank you for joining, everyone. This theme, Success Sadhana, sometimes it's a good idea to remind ourselves what it means. Sadhana means a practice. Very typically, it means spiritual practice. And what is success? According to the wisdom literatures, success means reestablishing our awareness of who we are. The only problem that I encounter, I was going to say problems, but then I stumbled over it. Let me start over. The problems that I face in this world have to do with an illusory concept of myself. I think of myself as something I'm not, and there's a concept in Sanskrit called Maya, means that which is not. So coming to the root of our existence is pleasurable. In fact, it's the source of all happiness. We are an emanation from an original conscious divine source, and we're part of that. What we're not is a temporary physical body, and that includes the idea of being either the gross body made out of water and earth, and there's air, and so forth in different combinations and permutations. There's also the mind. The mind is a subtle material energy. So there are practices that are used all over the world and have been used since antiquity to come into a clearer understanding of who we are. And there is a place within that is the eye of the storm being the mind, just raging on and offering various ideas about how to become free, mostly from suffering, which is a constant in this world. We've discussed it previously: body, mind, circumstances, other living entities. There are ways that we're constantly being assailed. So how do we find peace within that? How do we reconnect to our source and be aware of our original identity? And today we're also going into a very specific way in which we become enamored of our external feature, and we become filled with anxiety because of what we're talking about today, wearing a mask. So that's a preamble for today. And okay, Rajesh, good to see you here. And great to have everybody. We're going to start with a little session of introspection. And I'm going to switch over to a mode so that I can play some music in the background, which I've just done. And now, if you're there with me already, please take a moment for yourself. Get comfortably seated, and if you'd like to try sitting up just slightly straighter than you were a second ago, it can help you to focus, and try closing your eyes. Just let go of the race you've been running today to finish an endless to-do list, which will never end. And just be here for a moment. Once my spiritual teacher wrote to someone in a letter, I happen to have a copy of that letter. Quote, "The happiness that you are looking for you can immediately find as soon as you learn to look inside yourself by introspection. Introspection. Spec means to see. Intro means within. And another great teacher who is a predecessor teacher in the line that my teacher came from, in a poem once wrote, "Forget the past that sleeps, and never of the future dream at all, but live in times that are with thee, and progress ye shall call." In other words, don't dream about the future and don't crave for happiness. It's already something available within you. Get out of the storm. So now your eyes are closed, sitting up straight. You have a moment to introspect. So bring your awareness first to your breath and notice that you can transfer your awareness wherever you wish. This is your free will. If you don't like what you're being subjected to in your life, change the subject. And now, notice that you can transfer your awareness to your right hand. And just momentarily notice that your right hand is vibrant. It has feeling. That's because you, who are pure consciousness, are within the body, and the light of your pure consciousness extends to every limb in your body. Keep your awareness there and notice that your hand has life. It's alive. When you're not in the body, the life simply becomes dead matter. Your hand has feeling. It's animated right now because you're there. And now bring your awareness to your own awareness. This is not word play. It's a possibility because awareness, consciousness, has the ability to be aware of its own self. You are a conscious person, and you can become aware that you're a conscious person. So notice that you're here right now in the moment. And take this time to observe any thoughts that come into your purview. And just notice that they're there and that you're watching them. You are the watcher. You're the witness, the seer of the thoughts. Millions of these thoughts come into our mind like rivers flowing into the ocean. But from our position as the seer, we're aloof. We don't have to be activated by those thoughts. We can just watch them go by. We're here right now watching them. And if we sit here for 100 years, we'll also be able to observe how our thoughts are changing, our bodies are changing. If you could sit that long, you'd notice that your body changed, but you're still watching. You're still aloof. In the present moment, we're always okay. What's more, we exist. The world around us exists, but it's temporary. We exist permanently. Now notice how you can change the environment of your mind by envisioning a mantra. You can put the syllables Rama, R-A-M-A, in your own mind, and without speaking, speak them in your mind and say Rama, which means the source of all happiness. We have free will. We can point our awareness wherever we wish at any time. We always exist. We're always okay. And we can always adjust our internal state, which will change everything about our external state and the way we interact with the world. Just transfer your attention back to your breath, back to your right hand that you noticed a while ago, and just move your fingers of your right hand around and notice that you still have the power to point your attention anywhere you like. Wiggle all your fingers and toes. Notice that you can now become externalized. You can open your eyes that are little windows, little cameras to the outside world, and it's all there going on, and you're still there as the witness. And welcome back. Thank you, everyone, for that group exercise. Now, Jai Madhava, let's look at the slide and go from this experiential mode into more of a intellectual mode. It's amazing what humans can do, right? We can decide to do things like this. I came with this idea of masks because I had a friend in high school, Steve Walkup. He was a big football star and looked like a movie star. And I'd lost contact with him for decades. And then a mutual friend of mine said, "Oh yeah, I know Jeff Walkup. He was my work partner on an ambulance." Turned out he had become an EMT, and one of my best friends and knew him. It was just a coincidence. I said, "Jeff Walkup, I knew him from high school." And so my friend who worked on the ambulance told me that Jeff, who had become a bit of a hero, we can come back because I'm going to extend this story just a few more minutes. On the ambulance, especially in the Loma Prieta earthquake, he was one of the first responders who went and helped pull people out from one of the freeway systems that had pancaked, and there were people stuck in there. And he had received accolades and awards and so forth. And he started noticing in his career and his life that he wasn't satisfied. And he mentioned in the article that he wrote when he retired from the EMT that he had been wearing the mask of the hero. And the way people interacted with him as a hero and the way he thought of himself was not very satisfying. And he was wondering why. So he looked into it more and realized that his dissatisfaction came from a misidentification with himself as his career or as an imagined entity or the way people were looking at him. And so that article got a lot of acclaim as he had looked beyond just the superficial. And that's the essence of spiritual practice, looking beyond the superficial. And one of the ways we can do that is notice what masks we're wearing. They can be quite burdensome. Sociology, science of interaction of humans, describes how we play various roles in the world. And of course, those are necessary. But the ways in which we also take on identities and roles that bind us and that obligate us to act in a certain way, there's a great relief in going beyond those. That's a basic theme of today's talk. Now, may I see that excellent slide again? In context now. The ways of wearing masks. Also, I noticed during Halloween, everyone's thinking of how to wear a mask. Sometimes it can be liberating because it gets us away from the masks we're already wearing. We can be someone else without being recognized as a kind of liberation. So let's go a little more, let's go further into this slide deck and see what we have. So there's a psychological term called imposter syndrome, which is, in short, described as the fear that the world is going to find us out. And some of the exclamations of the mind are that I'm a fake, I don't really belong, I'm not really successful. Even people who are seemingly successful can have these feelings of guilt or anxiety, fear, and so forth. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about how no matter what our external circumstances in life, when we forget our real purpose and we forget who we are as the permanent entity in the body, who's witnessing how the world's going on around us, we're naturally going to feel fear and anxiety. In one of his verses, he talks about how when we become externally focused on our life situation, which role we're playing, and what things we have and don't have. I'm experiencing it right now. I'm going away for a long trip. I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience when you travel. If you go away for a long trip, there's a sense of, oh no, what's going to happen? I'm leaving everything. I have to leave behind my comfort zone. I have to decide what to take. Am I taking too much weight? Am I taking too few things? How will I survive? There's this constant struggle going in the mind that this I have to survive in the world, both physically and sociologically. And there's a way in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, when we're able to start from understanding who we are actually beyond the mask, and in the context of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that this whole body is a mask-like contraption. It's like I'm looking at you right now, and I can actually, if I peek over into my box, I can see my face. And I can see that I'm sitting here in a room and so forth. And I might think, oh, I'm a male, I'm 68 years old, I come from the Bay Area. I have a lot of ideas about who I am, where I'm from, and so forth. But Krishna says, yes, those things are practical. You have to interact with the world. But at the same time, they're not our ultimate identity. We're something that's deeply rooted in a higher reality. And when I become enamored of the position I'm in now, I either become fearful or I become disoriented. how I fit in. Fearful means that sense of anxiety that we might have in wearing a particular mask. So there are various psychological masks just following the course of this particular way in which we become disoriented in imposter syndrome. There are various symptoms: name dropping or living a lifestyle above one's means as a way to compensate. Someone might bully others. People might feel angry. They may also express victimhood. And the next slide is some anecdotal evidence of this kind of anxiety syndrome from the experience of celebrities. Celebrity, a famous person. The state of being well known, from Latin, celebritas, frequented or honored, being honored by others for various skills, oftentimes acting or music or whatever it may be. And so these are some of the ways in which people who are successful externally talk about their feelings. So one is there can often be a sense of isolation or mistrust, lack of personal privacy, and character splitting between the celebrity self and the authentic self. You often see people who are very famous. Now they get hounded by paparazzi and they'll come out covering their heads and like, not now. I just want to be myself right now. You may have seen that type of scene. And then some of them have described, I feel like an animal in a cage, a toy in a shop window, a Barbie doll, a public facade, a clay figure, or that guy on TV, as sometimes people just identify them as, oh, you're that guy on TV. So this is one of the ways in which people in a particular line of work or those who are famous for something have these feelings, but we may all have these types of feelings due to misidentification with our self. So in the next slide, Jam said, I fear that if I show what's behind my mask, someone will say, oh, it's just you. This is a fear we might carry with us. I'm projecting myself as being what? Let's have a few adjectives. Help me out. Which ways might I project myself so that I'm respected? Go ahead, Anapani.
To be cool.
Cool. I'm cool. Who looks in the mirror twice, 3 times before you go out? Do I look cool or not? I remember being in 3rd or 4th grade, and the coolest kid in my class was Steve Swearingen. Too bad he already passed, but he was a great athlete. He was the best looking, and he used to wear his jeans in a certain way. He'd flip them up at the bottom. And I remember stewing over it before going to school. If I flip mine up, will they think I'm imitating Steve Swearingen and trying to imitate a cool person? Or is it really cool? Boy, it's hard going through childhood, adolescence, figuring that out. Yeah, so cool, whatever types of things do we have to project ourselves as?
Nirali said, just like us.
What do you mean by that, Nirali?
Um, I think you would say, oh, they just feel just like us, right? They have cravings for food. They also want for like, something normal. Like clothes wise, they also go like, oh, it's cheaper, for example. So you would think they are like living a lavish life and they have these super friends and all that, but they just have normal people and friends and normal problems as well.
Right. Going back to the celebrities.
Yes,
Yeah, right, right. And then there's that dichotomy because people look at them in a different way. And
yes,
how many of you have ever had this experience that I'm projecting myself in a particular way, but if I do really say who I am, what I'm thinking, there might be groupthink in a specific group. I have to present myself in a particular way to fit in, or a family, or society in a certain way. That if I really show who I am, then people may be disappointed. Have you ever had that thought? Please, somebody say yes. Otherwise, I'll feel really alone here.
yes,
Thank you, Anapani. Thank you, Nirali. So this is a dichotomy between who we really are and a mask that we naturally wear. And one of the results of genuine spiritual practice doesn't mean, again, I'm repeating what I said before, that one become antisocial or completely ignore social norms, but it does mean to have a very deep sense of oneself beyond the mask. Even if you have to wear a mask to perform particular social duties or play as they say in sociology, a role, you still have a sense of yourself. And that sense is steeped in reality. And that's one of the main points that Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita. Become connected with your core, who you really are. And even if you play a role, you stay aware that that's not your permanent role. Don't be carried away by the characters. Method acting carried to the extreme. I think I am this body. I think I am this role. Even as I play the role, if I'm aware of the fact that I'm actually not permanently going to be in this position, one could be even more effective because one's not subjected to the same kinds of anxieties that others are. One has a cool, calm center through which one can deal with the various changes that go on in life. So here's a few reasons to shed masks. And that sounds a little scary. You mean just take off my mask and be revealed? Who and what you really are is better than any persona you can invent. Who and what you really are is better than any persona you can invent. And next is it's draining trying to be someone you're not. It's draining trying to be somebody you're not. And finally, relationships can't be truly whole until we feel vulnerable enough to show our real selves. Relationships can't be truly whole until we feel vulnerable enough to show our real selves. Let's discuss. I need a little more human interaction. I'm going to pull out my sign that somebody gave me in just a minute. I need some comments in the chat box and anyone who feels like speaking up, and just reflect. Anything you heard so far that's stuck in your mind. Nirali would like you to share the slide again. She's warming up to speaking and wants to see the slide. Who else can give a reflection, a comment, anything you heard so far that stuck with you? Anapayani, please.
Okay, I'm going to share a vulnerable story in attempt of shedding my mask.
Everyone's leaning in now. That's that.
So I have a friend from middle school and she's a model. So she's like one of the coolest kids in our school. And a couple months ago, me and my other friend were reconnecting with her. And I remember we were super nervous to see her. And we're wondering, like, what do we wear? Like, what do we talk about? Is it all going to be okay? And then when we all met, she was in pajamas relaxing. And then as we went home, my friend and I were laughing about like how we tried to portray ourselves to be someone totally different, but it didn't do anything at the end of it.
That's so interesting. And I've heard that there's a way in which, well, there's a scientific phenomena that you can't observe anything in its pristine state because as soon as you start looking at it, it changes. And it's very true sociologically. For instance, if you tell someone you're coming over to see how they live, they're going to start cleaning their house. They'll put out the magazine that makes them look the smartest, and they'll throw a bunch of stuff in the closet and is like, no, no, we're really neat and clean. That's a kind of mask. And that idea and what you expressed about going to see a friend, what will she think of us? Should we be cooler, a little cooler than we are now, wear something? This is going on constantly as we navigate the world. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Extra points for being vulnerable. Okay, let's have a few more. I'm getting my sign because I'm here. The signs.
I was gonna, okay, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, Moses.
I'll use the sign in a minute.
Thank you, Maharaj, for sharing those few examples. I really like the slides. One thing that I can kind of relate to was I remember right before meeting the devotees, I felt like I was always being watched, spiritually or internally. There was presence, and I remember feeling very insecure, as though I was going to be found out. And so it kind of pushed me to begin journaling and to begin kind of confessing, being vulnerable as to what my thought processes were throughout the day as I was doing it. And I remember when I started doing that shortly after I met the devotees, and kind of that anxiety of being people finding out who I really was. Um, it kind of went away when I started to kind of confess in my journal who I really was. It's almost like an extra mercy was there.
Yeah, thanks, Moses. It reminded me of a possible project that anyone who wanted to embark on this way of shedding mask could do. I love your point about journaling. This, at least first admitting it to yourself and revealing to yourself what's going on with you, where your fears are, and so forth. There's a term that most people know called cognitive dissonance. There's a way in which I may be acting one way externally, but doing something else internally. It can happen. It happens all the time. So what if I had a goal to eliminate all cognitive dissonance in my life? And what would it feel like if I came to this sense of complete integrity where whatever way I was presenting myself was true to my real values and was based on how I actually practice, even behind closed doors? That sort of endeavor is a kind of worthwhile process of self-realization, coming to the core of who we are. Thank you very much, Moses, for sharing that. That journaling can be very, very helpful. JM, it looks like we got something on the chat.
And Nirali says, sometimes I realize that I share much personal information, though not needed, but later realize that it's not needed. Not sure why. Maybe authentic or not hiding, but trying to remember, need to pause and think what what's need to be shared with whom, with who, etc.
That's such a nice point, and it is in line with one of the teachings of a person named Rupa Goswami, who wrote over 550 years ago. He was a direct student of Sri Chaitanya, who taught the process of bhakti yoga, and he was a prolific writer, Rupa. And in a short book he wrote called The Nectar of Instruction, he gleaned and then wrote down the major points for advancing spiritually. One of them, he states in the Sanskrit language, Guyam apyati prishyati, which means find the right people to whom you can reveal your vulnerabilities. And it's a very good point you make, Nirali, that we don't just go spraying them all over the place, because there are people who may not be able to reciprocate properly, and it may become counterproductive. But Guya means find somebody who's confidential. If you can have somebody like that in your life who you can speak to, who you know has your best interest in mind, that can be one of the greatest ways in which to come to a sense of one's identity beyond the mask. So oftentimes that fear gets released when we're able to talk to other people about it, or if, yeah. Puja. Puja, we still can't hear you. Go ahead. Now we can hear you.
Okay. No, I think you stated a really good point, because yes, you wear masks, and the more I think insecure you are in a particular environment, or the less you know the person, the stronger the mask. But then you kind of shed it with people you know really well, right? Who you feel you can be yourself with. So I think there is, and especially like what Anapayani was talking about, clothes. I mean, what you wear, how you speak, how you dress is a mask. It's a strong expression of how you want the external world to perceive you. And so, yeah, it's stronger when you're in a strange environment. But like if I'm with my family or with my sisters, you are just yourself. You are freer to be yourself. And so is it really appropriate to take that way of being in all situations? I like what you said about carrying the sense of self, even in situations where you have a mask on, but being aware of it. Because I don't think it's possible to shed the mask completely in all situations.
You're very right. And there's referring to my source of this presentation, the wisdom literatures, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam as an example. There's a very reasonable way of approaching this, and that is understanding that when we're working in the world, there's a different kind of consideration. This is called Vyavaharika. Vyavaharika life means that, for instance, you have to work. And what if you go to your interview and then you get all vulnerable? Or you wax esoteric and they say, where are you from? And you say, well, actually, I'm not from this world. I'm from the spiritual world. You know how it is. They'll take your paper and put it in the other file. And so what the Vyavaharika consideration is, no, there is an external world and you have to relate to it. You have to understand that there are roles to play. Nor can you, for instance, in social roles, say in family, let's just say you're a parent, and then you have this sense of identity as I'm in a body, I'm just passing through this world, and then you extend that to your kids and you don't express affection to your family members, to your spouse, because they like, I'm aloof. The Srimad Bhagavatams don't do that. it'll cause a disturbance because there is a way in which your family, even if you happen to be on that level of aloofness, which is not sustainable anyway, there's a way in which you may harm the people around you and make your life unstable. The other counterpart, the counterpart to that conception is called paramartika, which means your ultimate goal in life. Paramartika. Para means the highest. So you have to maintain those two things at the same time. And that's an art, the art of living in the world, but considering that this is not my ultimate destination. I cooperate with the world. It's not that this is my life. This is something I'm passing through. My life situation is a temporary thing. My real thing is permanent. Yes, Vasudev. Vasudev, we can't hear you yet.
Vasudev, we do see that you are unmuted, but we still can't hear you. I don't know if you're double muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So, when you were talking about it, like, the mask or, the fake identification, perceiving it as two ways, right? One is what you want yourself to be seen by the world, and one is what the world wants to see from you, right? Those two can be completely different. And sometimes it becomes challenging to manage both views, right? You want to, portray yourself in a certain way, but, on the other end, there's a different way they want to look at you, right? And it becomes challenging in certain environment, like where you need to mask. Like I even saw a question like whether it, is it a role identification? Because for each role you have to act differently, right? Sometimes even when talking as a team, your real self may be a jolly good personality where, you want to be happy, having fun, but you need to filter down a lot of things and make sure like, it's seen or perceived differently, like more in a calm demeanor, call it professional ethics, or, you're not your true self, right? So you don't say what you think, right? So it becomes challenging at several different environments or different settings, right? How do we?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. The question will be very valuable. Go ahead.
Yeah. How do we manage those two, right? To avoid this, whatever the imposter syndrome or things like that.
Yeah, perfect question. It's going to come up in the next slides. I do have a solution based on what the wisdom literatures talk about, and that'll be upcoming. Not next session, this one. But let's, JM, shall we move ahead on the slides and then come back to the remarks on the,
Sure.
so you can keep this thought contiguous with what Vasudev just asked. So a few more quotes. I'm going to continue the thought process for a minute here. We have, let the world know you as you are, not as you think you should be, because sooner or later, if you are posing, you will forget the pose, and then where are you? I'm just giving a couple of quotes from popular sources just to point out this is a thing people think about. The other one from E. Cummings, the greatest battle we face as human beings is the battle to protect our true selves from the self the world wants us to become. So the next slide is a story from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's about a great king. He held that position and was known as a great hero. He fought his last battle. That's what this picture is, or was. And he had been defeated in battle, uncharacteristically because he had fought so many battles and then was considered to be invincible. The story describes how, as he fell to the ground, he had clenched his jaw to show that he was heroic as he passed. His body was shattered, basically. And he had associates, he had family members, and they all came and they clutched his corpse there on the battlefield and were wailing in separation from him. And you see on the right-hand side that figure of a small boy. In the story of Srimad Bhagavatam, the small boy was a representative of the demigods who oversee the passing of a soul from a body into the next destination. And so he had come there and in a form that would be accepted, which is a 5-year-old boy, which you see there. And he asked the grown-ups there why they were crying and why they were upset. And they said, our husband, and some like our son, the king has gone or he's dead. And the boy said, how do you mean that? He's right there. And they looked at him incredulously and said, you don't understand, little boy. And he looked right back at them and said, no, you don't understand. You never saw your husband. You never saw your son. And for the subjects, you never really saw the king, because that body has the same hands, the same legs, same eyes. Everything is same there. But the essence that was within the body, the consciousness that animated the body, is now gone. And that's the part you never saw. You only related to the external feature. And this is the norm in our interactions with everyone in this world and our conception of ourself. So in just answering this, how does one navigate the world in which we're playing all these roles? The Srimad Bhagavatam advises, come to this realization of who you really are. We started with a brief meditation, and we had this experience, hopefully, that we can be the observer of our thoughts. We can be the observer of our hands and our legs and our eyes. You can even look in the mirror if you wish. And if you want to really freak yourself out, just stare at your eyes and your nose for a long time. And you'll start thinking, I'm not my face. These are all instruments. Who am I? I'm the one looking out at them. And so solid ground, and the way we have our feet on solid ground that means the realization that we're not our body, allows us to navigate these complex situations you were talking about just a minute ago. Vasudev, I hope I'm calling you by your right name, because that's what it says there, but it's V Vasudev. How should I be addressing you? Because
Vasanti.
Vasudi. Okay, thank you, Vasudi. I didn't think you were Vasudev. That's why. Okay, so this is solid ground. In the next slide, we have this concept of samsara, which is we're conscious beings who are permanent, but we're constantly changing our external identity. There are 8,400,000 species of life. And even while we're in this human body, we change from youth to adolescence to maturity to middle age to old age and so forth, but we're the same person. And that brings us to the next slide, which is one I have a 3D statue of. This next slide, number 13, that I've brought to various corporate environments. I have it's actually a mold that was done by hand by a very expert artist. I still have it in pristine condition, which is amazing. This isn't a picture of it, but when I carry it into various lobbies or bring it into classrooms, people get fascinated and say, oh my God, what is that? And I say, what do you think it is? And they say, oh, it looks like my life, but I've never seen it all in one place. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, get a wider perspective, get a higher perspective. Recently, I was in the Salesforce building, and I forget which floor it is, 71st floor, one of the floors where you have a 360-degree view of San Francisco and the whole Bay Area. And just looking out from the windows there, it changed my relationship with the whole city. It stuck with me. And similarly, when we change our perspective about who we really are, it gives us the wherewithal to calmly deal with our external circumstances and the roles that we have to navigate, because we have a sense like I'm always okay in the moment. And no matter what role I have to play or what I have to go through, I know that I'm okay. And that's solid ground. That's the platform from which we can navigate the world. Vasudhi, that's the answer that I wanted to offer there in a very basic way.
Yeah, yes, that answers my question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
JM, shall we visit some of the reflections on the chat?
Sure. Nicholas mentioned, I've actually done research about something similar about the authentic self, which was the shadow self. It's a way to get through social anxiety, as ourselves should ignore judgment of others for who you truly are. Therefore, one can speak freely without fear.
Nice. Obviously, it's a ubiquitous practice and topic.
And SG has a question. Yesterday, in one of the webinars about kids and stress, I learned a powerful technique that when you are not judgmental and practice empathy and active listening, the kids let their guard down and become more open to sharing. Then shift from stress to plan. It seems like the kids put on a mask to please their parents. Do you have any additional suggestions for parents to help kids?
Well, my experience is in any relationship, but also with kids. Well, let me start with any relationship, and that is that trust has to develop. And that's something that develops over time. When you're there in various circumstances and you are reliable, then trust allows for more vulnerability and ways in which kids might open up and speak to you in ways that they normally wouldn't, because before trust is established, there may be a sense of, well, I don't want to disappoint the person, or I have to play my role. And you can feel when things are official, and also when they change and they become more trusting, the relationship becomes more trusting. And I like everything that you put down there. There is a way of interacting with most people that's highly effective that I find is to be in some one of the words is dispassionate, which means to take the intention out of it. In other words, when you're dealing with a complex situation or some frictional situation, interpersonal relationships, is to try not to be overly emotional when dealing with it, and to also not, in expressing one's self to the other person, accuse them of a malintent. Just to describe the situation to them from a neutral point of view. That's called nonviolent communication. I shared a paper about that. I didn't write the paper, but I shared a summary of that a while back. And what's the last one, Jam? Sorry to move things on, but I'm just realizing we're near the end. Go ahead.
Srinivas says, You mentioned you can be an observer of your thoughts. Can you share how to do that?
Yes. If you follow a process of taking time, I recommend sitting somewhere where you won't be disturbed by the external environment. And then take time, close your eyes, and progressively go through an observation of your various limbs. And notice that you can shift your attention to, for instance, your hands, your legs, your hair, and just objectify them and notice that you're watching them, you're looking at them. And when you notice that you have that ability to move your awareness from one limb to the next, then turn inwardly and notice that you're noticing. Notice that you are aware. It's an absorbing feeling. And when we're able to isolate and become just absorbed in awareness and not eager to chase after whatever thoughts come in, we can experience our own consciousness. What to speak of, we can notice that our thoughts are external. When you notice a thought come into your environment, you can just look at it. Don't judge it. Don't try to get rid of it. Don't chase after it and say, I want to keep this. Just watch it and notice that it's energy that's coming into your purview, just like a cloud might come in. That's energy also. And when you're able to do that, you can find a safe core where you're the what's called sakshi, the witness of what's happening. Hope that helps.
TT, I see that you are unmuted. I don't know if you have thoughts or comment to share.
You're
Still
welcome.
thank you.
Well, I mean, today's topic's given me a lot to think about. It always does, because it's one thing to talk about masks and so forth, but it's another thing to actually deal with it.
Nicholas had a question. How would we prevent a mask or persona from being made or stop it from expanding?
Well, we do have roles and personas automatically in this world. It comes as being participants in the world. And the way to stop it from expanding is to notice that it is superfluous. It's not unuseful. We have to keep some sense of our roles and our masks. But if we're aware of the fact that I'm playing a role that's not me, but I'm doing it, it's in a utilitarian way. I'm interacting with the world because that's what I have to do. That's the Vyavaharika I was speaking of. But there's a way in which I can become overwhelmed by it. And then I'm constantly working to keep up with it. For instance, I'll just go back to our celebrities. It's very difficult being a celebrity nowadays because nowadays, I notice a lot of times, and it must be excruciatingly painful to some people to have fame or beauty and then to watch a time lapse. Like what people do nowadays, they'll take a picture of somebody who is known to be very beautiful, handsome, and then they'll say, that's what they used to look like. And now look what they look like now. And if you're identified with, I was the most beautiful person, I was the most handsome of all, and then you see your picture side by side with, oh, I'm fat, or now I have wrinkles, you'll be in so much anxiety. So that's why I showed that progression where body's always changing. And if we can have that sense of I'm the entity that never changes, I'm the witness, it's moving through. We may have masks, we may use them to work in the world, but they don't expand for us to become we're not fully absorbed in them and we don't fully identify with them. That's altogether possible. Wow, it went 1 minute over. That's the first time I've ever done that, JM. You can mark it. After 213 of these shows, we went over time. Well, that reminds me that there are those who are dedicated to this process, some of them of whom I've met high in the Himalayas, and they have this way of always encouraging others. Not only do they, when they see other of their colleagues who are practicing meditation, do they encourage, but even if they're pilgrims walking through the Himalayas and they just happen to catch a yogi out collecting some berries, because yogis eat a lot of berries. And what they'll do is they'll put the berries down and they raise their hands up high in the air like this, and they'll say this phrase, which has its kind of spiritual potency. It means keep the transcendental vibration going. Hari is a name which means one who takes away all your obstacles. And Bol means to say. So this is kind of an encouragement. Shall we try it?
Yes.
We'll be like the yogis. Put your berries down and put your hands up. Hari Bol!
Haribol!
Thanks, everybody. It was great to see you. I'm going to check in as much as possible. I'm leaving for a year. Haribol. Not a good time to say something during the Haribol. I'll see you later. I'm going to a retreat in India. I'll be gone for a little while, and I'll be trying to check in as much as possible. Thanks, Hanapani. And I'll look forward to seeing you as soon as I get back. I have to go absorb myself, refresh, try to get beyond the masks, and come back and try to be useful. So thank you, everybody. I'm deeply grateful. I'll see you ASAP.